I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. The time is 5:31. The board will now reconvene into open session. The time is 6:55. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the Matters from the Floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. Finally, I would like to remind all of you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Next item.
5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. A, Ed White Middle School, Principal Philip Carney.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, members of the executive staff, and guests, it is my pleasure to introduce 2 of our outstanding students at Ed White Middle School. I would like to first introduce Nathan Smith III, who's an 8th grade student. Nathan is our student council president. He is involved in our Safe School Ambassador program, and he is also a member of our mathematics UIL team. Here to support Nathan are his parents, Miss Renee Smith and Mr. Nathan Smith Jr. Michaela Perry is an 8th grader and is a member of our yearbook organization. Here to support Michaela is her mother, Maria Embulo. Nathan is going to lead us with a thought for the evening, and then the pledge to the American flag and the Texas flag will be recited by Michaela Perry. Nathan?
Welcome to November. In the Ed White NEISD and greater community, it is a season for thanks. Thanksgiving means thanking people who help us, and also to give back to our country. If you are an educator, thank you for caring enough to correct us when we're wrong, to celebrate when we're right, and to love us through anything. If you are an administrator, thank you for keeping us safe, making sure bullies don't win, and providing a great learning environment. If you are a veteran, thank you for fighting for our country, giving us freedoms and liberties, and protecting our right to come to school. As we are so blessed, let us remember to also give back. Let us give clothes to shelters like Haven for Hope, SAM Ministries, and Salvation Army. Let us give food to food banks like San Antonio Food Bank, and support food services like Raul Jimenez Dinner. Let us give toys to children in need through organizations like the Marine Toys for Tots and Elf Louise. Let others be blessed like we are, and let our actions reflect on our community.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Will you please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, one indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith and Ms. Perry. You will be receiving some certificates from Mr. White and Mr. Smith. And Ms. Perry, I think we're very blessed to have both of you as our students. And we wish you all the best, and we know you'll do very well in high school. And thank you for being here tonight. You're free to stay, you're free to leave, whatever's best for you. Next item.
6, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments.
Do I have a motion on routine personnel as presented in closed session?
I move that we approve personnel as presented in closed
Thank you,
session.
Mrs. Perkins. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. There can be no discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item.
2, possible action regarding recommendation for termination of Chapter 21 term contract employee.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the termination of the identified employee's Chapter 21 term contract discussed at executive session and notify the employee of the proposed action to include the grounds for the action?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item.
3, possible action regarding proposed recommendation for termination of Chapter 21 continuing contract employee.
And we have no action.
4, introductions.
Dr. Gotardi?
Thank you, Madam President, board members, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege this evening to introduce to you a new assistant principal of Harmony Hills Elementary School, Kimberly Charles. Kimberly joined the Northeast family in 2011. Prior to being named assistant principal at Harmony Hills Elementary, she was a teacher at Cibolo Green Elementary School. Ms. Charles received her bachelor's degree in education in 1997 and also earned her master's degree in administration supervision in 2007, both from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Ms. Charles has a total of 17 years in education. Welcome and congratulations, Kimberly. And that concludes our introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gotardi. Mrs. Charles, congratulations on your promotion. We wish you all the best. Thank you. And Harmony Hills is a wonderful school. So congratulations. Next item.
B, possible action on the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pursuant to Government Code Section 551.072.
No action.
C, possible action regarding consultation with board's attorney pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071. 1, possible and pending litigation.
No action.
7, presentations. A, facilities planning process.
And this is Mr. Clary.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests. The district's Transforming the Future strategic plan includes a goal, specifically Goal 8, to address inequities district-wide. As a result, a needs assessment survey has been developed to assess facilities, technology, equipment, library collections, and other resource program areas. This survey will be presented to campus administrators and selected district staff on November 13th, with the actual survey taking place on November 17th through December 17th. The survey is just one tool the district will use to determine whether to move forward with the plans for a future bond program. Mr. Sullivan is at the program to make the presentation.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce the facilities planning process, which is part of our strategic design platform that began about a year ago. Before we begin, I'd like to make a few key introductions. We have with us Ms. Deb Caldwell, Director, Government Relations and Grant Development, who's been instrumental and appointed by the superintendent to kind of be the point person for this planning process. Mr. Jorge Cabello, our Senior Director of Construction Planning and Design, who's also a member of the strategic design team for the district, and Mr. Tom Johnson, Senior Director for Technology Services, who also plays a key role in this process, representing the technology component of the program. I represented the goal number 8 planning process as part of the strategic design plan, which focused on developing a set of standards for resources to address inequalities district-wide. And as you know, from the strategic design process, this is a multi-year phased-in plan, and goal number 8 and goal number 2, which was co-chaired by Mr. Johnson, who is the Senior Director of Technology Services. Both of us were selected to be members of these goal committees to help in the facilitation of and the kind of the guiding of the committees in terms of how we developed our action plans and our focus for meeting those goals. And then Mr. Cabello was selected to serve as one of the 40 members on the strategic design team. Everything we're going to talk about falls under the umbrella of the strategic design platform and planning process for the district. Now, right off our district webpage, goal 2 and goal number 8 form kind of the nucleus for our facility needs assessment. And you can see there's some check marks that are shown here for those goals that were selected in year number 1 for implementation. 1 goal in technology and 3 goals in the goal number 8, which was the standards for resources. What we're going to begin this evening with the facility planning process is we're going to start the process for the other 2 goals, or the other 2 specific results in goal number 2 that deal with technology, and development of the resource plan under goal number 8, which essentially establishes the facility and other inequities that exist across the district so that we have a baseline with which to evaluate and assess what our next steps are. Our first step is going to be to conduct an internal survey of the district leadership team, where we put together surveys, which you've been provided copies of, which we'll be presenting to the campus principals and district cabinet and program directors this coming Thursday at the monthly principals meeting. And this survey of all campus principals and cabinet and department heads is going to provide us the baseline information on what is the status of our campuses and where are the inequalities across the district. Because between bond programs, things can change at a campus. We can move programs, we can move portables, there may be additional needs at one campus that aren't truly apparent. So by taking this snapshot in time in 2014, we'll have a baseline across the district of where are the inequalities that exist amongst the campuses so that we can determine how best to approach those inequalities and address them. That's going to be conducted between mid-November and mid-December. After we receive the results of the surveys, then the construction management engineering department team, along with Mr. Johnson and Deb Caldwell, we're going to begin analyzing all the information gathered from the surveys and put together essentially a survey assessment, a results matrix that will then present back to the superintendent and executive staff in January, and then to the cabinet and department heads in February, essentially establishing what were the results of the surveys that we conducted at the end of 2014. We're also going to conduct some external surveys of the community. We'll be talking to PTAs, DEICs, we'll have a district online survey, a telephone survey, and we'll be also meeting with our Citizens Bond Committee starting this next monthly meeting in November to get input from them on what is the temperature in terms of support for conducting a future bond program, which would be necessary to address the facility shortcomings that are going to be developed through this assessment process. Now, we certainly can spend M&O money to try to handle some of the smaller dollar value needs, but if we're really going to address the truly large facility inequalities that exist district-wide, it's probably going to require a much larger investment of capital through a bond program. And these are some of the discussions that we're going to have with the district leadership team, executive staff, the campus principals, department heads, and others as we try to develop what's the best plan moving forward to address the inequalities. Now, following the conduct of all those surveys, we're going to come back together And we've really got a decision to make. We could either choose to do course of action number one and move forward to put together a facility steering committee that would then help guide the district in terms of what's the most important facility inequalities to address initially, because obviously the number of inequalities that are going to be apparent from the survey is going to far exceed what we could accomplish in a single bond program. I mean, it's probably going to represent several billion dollars of needs, and we'll have to determine what is the most appropriate needs to address in the next bond program as we move forward. And obviously, course of action 2 would be if there is not really a feeling that we're ready to move out for a bond program, then we would table the discussions. We have all of our survey information ready to go, and assessment completed, and we're ready for the next step whenever that becomes apparent. Now I'd like to review with the timeline that we put together, which you've also been provided a copy of, and then also highlight the components of the survey. So here's our timeline. As you can see up there in the upper left-hand corner, the first action we're going to take is to issue the surveys to the campus principals, cabinet level officers, and department heads, and they'll have a month to complete that. Then we'll begin compiling the results of this assessment, and we'll brief these results back to executive staff and the cabinet in January and February during the timeframes that are shown. We'll also conduct our external surveys between mid-January and early February. And at that point, we have a decision to make. That's decision point number one. Do we move forward at that point and form a facility committee, or do we stop? If we choose to move forward, then the facility committee would be appointed, or the invitation would be issued, and those members would be selected and form a facility committee. And then we would complete the tasks that are shown in blue with community meetings and gaining input from all the different stakeholders and coming up with what would be the most appropriate bond program to go forward with. And then we would come back to you in mid-June and present the results and the recommendations to you of what would be the most appropriate bond program to address the first set of facility inequalities that we've determined. And at that point, you would have a second decision point, whether we move forward with a bond election or again, whether we stop and then we table the discussions and we reevaluate what would be the next appropriate time to move forward. Now, as far as the survey goes, we've developed the survey into 3 main sections with an introductory narrative. And there's one for the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school, because each level of facility has different components and different program areas within it. The survey is organized into 3 sections. Section A, educational appropriateness and suitability. Section B looks at the actual building exterior site, interior operating systems, and campus safety and security. And then Area C focuses on allowing the campus leadership team to provide us a narrative of what were the top 5 most pressing facility needs. And also looking out to the future, what would be their top 5 needs 5 years from now. So a close-in look and then a look 5 years into the future. This is an example of the cover sheet with the narrative and then beginning the process of completing the questionnaire, which will all be essentially a fillable SurveyMonkey type form where you just go through and you check the boxes or provide the information requested by the survey. They'll have the opportunity to stop and to pick it back up at their leisure as they go through the responses to the survey questions. And we anticipate there's going to be, campus meetings with their leadership teams and their department heads to gain the input that's going to be deriving the results for the survey. Now, the cabinet and department heads, they're going to have their own survey, which we'll look at the end of the presentation, which gives them the opportunity to provide their top 10 prioritized facility needs at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels, as well as a district-wide look. Here you can see page 2 where there's a lot of technology questions, information about portables and how they're used. And then we have a Likert scale, a very simple scale. If you look at the top blue band, we have the item number and the building component, and then we have from very good, good, poor, or fair, poor, and very poor. If you check poor or very poor, you'll be asked to make a comment so that we understand what is essentially substandard or what is the issue with regards to that particular area. So they have a chance to look at their building from the exterior and their site conditions. And then here is beginning of section B, which looks at building interior areas. Everywhere from you come in the front of the school to the waiting area and go through each of the program areas within the facilities. Then as you go to the salmon color, look at building finishes and interior features. We've even included line items where they can tell us how their student furniture is. You know, does it need to be replaced or is it in good condition? Or maybe first through K through second grade is in good condition and they need upper grade level furniture. Then we look at the functionality of their building systems. You know, how well does their air conditioning and heating system work, their lighting system, telephones, and so forth. Then at the bottom you can see for question 45B, we're asking them about their technology network, the speed of the connectivity of their hardwired network, their wireless network, their guest wireless network, and then how reliable is the connection for those 3 networks. And then finally in the red area we have our campus safety and security, looking at everything from perimeter fencing and gates through parking lot lighting, keyless access control. Is their entry vestibule securable, or is it just open where somebody could walk through it if somebody's not watching? Their life safety systems, fire alarm, emergency exit lights, security cameras, their panic device. You know, tell us how all of the safety and security items within your campus, how does it appear to you in terms of its functionality and how well it's going to address this core area. Then we finish up the survey with some other questions that kind of drill down into some of the areas that were on the Likert scale, like tell us a little bit more about your parent-family center if you have one, or your student counselor area, or your cafeteria dining. How many lunch periods do you have? How many people sit in the cafeteria during lunch periods? You know, is your cafeteria really, is it sized appropriately or is it too small? And then at the end, you can see their overall facility needs. They have an opportunity to enter their top 5 short-term and long-term, which is 5 years from now, what are their top 5 pressing needs at the campus. That exact same survey, but modified for the middle school and high school level, is then provided to those 2 campus principal groups. And it goes through the same kind of format, but it has other components, because each of the school levels has different program areas. And then finally, for our cabinet level and department heads, they look at their program across the district, whether it be athletics, fine arts, JROTC, technology. Every program director and cabinet level executive director is going to look across the district at all 3 levels, elementary, middle school, and high school, as well as district-wide, and then provide their top 10 prioritized list of what are the most pressing needs in their program area. So they've got a kind of a different look than the campus would have. And we'll compile all this, and we'll be back to you early next year after we have the results of the assessment and have briefed the district's leadership team and tell you what our next steps are. At this point, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Do we have questions for Mr. Sullivan?
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm excited about engaging, of course, the community in the whole survey process. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's going to be distributed, how they can participate? I'm assuming it's also online?
There'll be an online survey that they'll be able to access through our webpage, and there's also going to be a telephone survey that's administered by a group outside the district.
Okay, and are we using our regular kind of methods of communication to our parents to say this is now available online?
Dr. I'd like to ask Ms. Caldwell if she could, this is kind of her area,
Yeah.
ma'am, and I think she might be able to speak to it better than I could.
And in the meantime, before Deb comes to the microphone, Ms. Wolf, I obviously, all those things. We're going to be contacting the community, just like we did with the strategic design effort, where we went to the community to ask for their input, as well as going to the website and asking them to fill out online surveys. We're going to be doing all that,
Great.
but please keep in mind that most of the details to that part of this feedback, this data gathering, has not been ironed out yet.
Okay.
Completely. This part has obviously been ironed out, we hope very well, and we will move into that phase of the data gathering right after we come back from winter break. Deb, anything I failed to mention?
I would just add that we have an opportunity to contact parents also through the phone, not just email. We have a system that allows us to do that, to notify them about the online survey being available, and of course, they'd be able to access that at computers at the campus as well.
That's what my next question was. Great. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Anyone? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan. I think it's a great process. I think it exhibits a lot of prudence and forethought, and I really like it. Congratulations. Yes, sir, Dr.
Ms.
Gotardi.
President, board members, let me just add, I really appreciate the staff's effort to put this initial survey together. You know, due to our transformational work a year ago and our comprehensive strategic design plan that we have for the next 3 to 5 years, obviously, facilities, equipment, technology, district-wide was a very important part of our strategic design framework. So I'm excited as well, Mr. President, and I'm excited that we're going to move forward with this. I keep getting, seems like everywhere I go, people want to know, when's the next bond election? When's the next bond election? And I keep telling people that this is the first part. We have to survey our stakeholders. We have to survey our community as to whether or not they're interested in that process or not. Hopefully they will be. But obviously, I think that's an important part of going through this process. And we won't have those kind of decisions made until probably May or June. I think Gary has June 15th, I think, on the timeline where we come to a board meeting and we tell you, okay, here's where we're at and here's where we're going. And just like if you remember back in the spring of 2011, we put the brakes on and said, okay, time's not right. I don't know what we're going to do yet. We have to go through this process, just like we did with the transformation program, to gather a lot of feedback from our district employees and feedback from our taxpayers and our community to know where exactly we're going with this process.
Good.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Mrs. Huey? Next item.
8, new business for possible board action. A, board policy. 1, possible action regarding board policy DNA local, second reading.
Dr. Newman.
Thank you, President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff. We ask that the Board of Trustees approve the second reading for policy DNA local. This is the second reading. Mr. Trevino, Executive Director for HR, is available for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. Do we have any questions for Mr. Trevino? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve second reading of attached board policy DNA local as submitted.
Thank you, Mrs. Grono. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Additional questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next item.
2, possible action regarding board policies DGBA local, FNG local, and GF local, second reading.
Dr. Newman.
Thank you, President Bresnahan. This is the second reading for these 3 policies, and we ask that the board approve the second reading as attached.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading of attached board policies DGBA local, FNG local, and GF local as submitted?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. White. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item.
It's cranking right along. 3,
you.
possible action regarding Board Policy Update 100,
Dr.
second and final reading.
Sorry. Dr. Gotardi.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you,
Yes,
Madam
sir.
President, board
Sure.
members. We bring to you update 100. We brought to you first reading month before, and we're bringing to you second reading this evening for your consideration and approval. We'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Gotardi? Yes, thank you for the effort behind this.
Yes, ma'am.
Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second and final reading of attached policies in Update 100 with the exception of Board Policy CKE and FDA Local?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you.
Second. Wolf.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Any additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. Next item.
B, instruction. 1, possible action regarding 2015-2016 proposed traditional school calendar.
Mrs. Hawkins.
Thank you, President Bresnahan, board members, and Dr. Gotardi. Colleen Borman, our Executive Director of Curriculum Compliance, will present this proposed calendar.
Thank you, Mrs. Borman. Go ahead.
Good evening. It's calendar time. On September 30th, 2014, the NEISD campuses were provided 2 options, calendars, and directed to cast 1 vote. 66 campuses voted for option 1, 0 voted for option 2. The DEIC then met on October 15th to discuss that feedback from the campuses. And NEISD campuses and DEIC unanimously recommend option 1 calendar as the 2015-16 traditional calendar. When you look at option 1, the first day of instruction would begin August 24th, 2015. The last day of instruction would be June 2nd. Semester 1 would end December 18th. Semester 2 would begin on January 4th, 2016. Just as a reminder, the proposed calendar falls within the legal guidelines established by the state and also by our board policy. It contains 187 days, 77 days for student instruction, 10 days for professional development, work days. Religious holidays were considered in the creation of the calendar options. It is recommended to the Board of Trustees to approve the 2015-16 proposed option 1 calendar as the traditional calendar as proposed by DEIC and the NEISD campuses.
We're glad it falls within the legal guidelines.
We aim to please.
Thank you.
For compliance.
Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Wolf?
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed the biggest difference was just the end date on the 3rd. What else am I missing?
In February.
Okay. It was a work day. Was an extra work day in February?
Uh-huh.
So we're ending on the recommendation is to end on a Thursday instead of a Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
Additional questions? Thank you, Mrs. Wolf.
No, I just have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know when A&M's spring break is that year? Because it's not the same this year.
Yes, ma'am. We did do research on that. We did have a question from one of our constituents. And what we did find was that typically cities follow colleges that are within the city usually follow the same calendar. So no, we are not in alignment with any of our colleges. That's okay. Big or small. We're just basically in alignment with the colleges in San Antonio.
Okay.
We also follow the north side calendar as well for spring break.
Okay, thank you.
So
She's a good
question.
mom. She's looking after her family.
Yeah, one's going to be mad when they don't get to go on vacation.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 proposed option 1 calendar as the traditional school calendar as proposed by the district-wide Educational Improvement Council?
I so move.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Any additional questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Borman.
C, business services. 1, possible action regarding comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended June 30, 2014.
Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, executive staff, Dr. Gotardi, and guests. Jeff Coates, our senior accounting manager, is going to run through a small little presentation, but it's our usual report that we have to approve once a year.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Gotardi, members of the executive staff, and members of the audience. We're going to give a brief presentation on the CAFR. I know that the board has gotten this just a little bit ago, so I'm going to give a brief overview on how the CAFR relates because it's a very large document. All right. The comprehensive annual financial report comes in 5 sections. We have an introductory section, the financial section, the supplementary section, the statistical section, and federal award section. And they're all interrelated and more or less build on each other. It's like a big old Christmas present, just a little bit early. On the introductory section, you have your normal things, table of content. The transmittal letter is a forward-looking document. It kind of gives you a little bit of summary about the districts, its achievements, what to look forward to in the future, if there's any specific revenue things that are coming up with the state. And then the MD&A is the next section in the financial. Those are the 2 main written parts. It kind of tells the story of the district going forward and also what happened during the year. The MD&A is more current focused, but if you're going to read anything, if you read those 2 pieces of information, you get a pretty good overview of what happened for the year and what we're looking forward at. Now, if you're very ambitious, you can go through and look at all the financial statements, of which there are numerous in this thing. But the MD&A will explain the financial results for the year. It also has our auditor's opinion, and they give us the yay or nay on whether we state the financial statements in accordance with U.S. accounting principles. The notes of financial statements give you more detail if the financial statements weren't enough for you. The supplementary information will give you details of each of the combined funds. In our financial statements, our governmental funds include special revenue funds as a whole, and so it will break out each of those funds individually. We also report in the front part our internal service funds and enterprise funds as a whole total, and in the back section it gives you more detail for each fund. You also get a detail of capital assets used in governmental funds, TA required schedules including the tax schedule, optimum fund balance, your budget schedule for debt service and child nutrition. There's a budget to actual schedule for the general fund in the main section of the financial report. In the stats section, it is broken down into 5 areas, and it's a 10-year period, so you can see trends that come through. It is a great way to see what's happened and the directions. Luckily, we've been pretty solid, and trends are real steady, so there's nothing too alarming, but you get a lot of information both on the district now and 10 years ago. Finally, you have the federal award section. This is requirement with the Single Audit Act. Our auditors they audit a major program every year. There's findings and question costs. There's a schedule of financial awards expended for the year. If we have issues, it could lead to repayment of federal awards, higher audit costs, and scrutiny from federal and state agencies. None of those which we wish to have, so this is an important thing, and our grants department does a very good job of keeping things squared away. Finally, general fund results, they differ from the interim financial statements that you normally see by quite a bit because the CAFR includes accruals for salaries and benefits, accrual of purchases received, and one of the main things is that you cannot overspend the budget by function. So all the budget amendments you make during the year and all the forecasts that Mr. Moy and his department prepare and give to you to review, they're very important because they try to forecast as best they can what's going to happen, and we're very fortunate they do a good job. This is a summary of the budget to actual schedule in the general fund. If you look, you can see that we did not overexpend any functions, and when you look at the actual differences, we're within $7 million in total net income for the year, and a $500 million budget. Pretty phenomenal job. All right. Finally, one of the big things that governmental financial reporting does is it takes the fund level, the general fund, the debt service fund, capital projects funds, and then we throw in a full accrual statement, supposedly to make it easier to understand, to compare it to corporate. But the problem is, how do you compare what we've always looked at on a monthly basis to that? And there are several schedules that do that. And for the year for our governmental funds, which is the debt service, capital projects, general fund, and special revenue funds, we had a net change in fund balance of $206 million. And when we do a bunch of accounting entries to consolidate things, we consolidate the internal service funds in, which increases fund balance. Our change in capital and debt for a full accrual, capital expenditures are capitalized, so they don't show up in the income statement. Debt expenditures are just a change in our liability, so they don't show up in the expenditure report either. And so that decreases our fund balance by $168 million. And we add depreciation because our governmental funds don't show that, of another $55 million hit. Some reclassifications and eliminations between funds of $723,000. And our change in net position on a full accrual basis is a negative $9.5 million. Now, a big chunk of that was due to a change in accounting principle this year. So it's a one-time $6.7 million hit. So it's not really as bad as what it seems. And this fluctuates from year to year because the internal service funds will all have different amounts of income or loss, and that's allocated up and combined when they combine this. But just want to give you kind of a real quick look at the difference between what you look at monthly and what the full accrual version is at the end of the year. Now that we had that quickie presentation, are there any questions that y'all have?
Any questions or comments?
Just a comment.
Sure.
I
Mrs.
just
Huey?
wanted to, knowing totally that there's no way this could ever happen, I will admit, first of all, that I did not read all 226 pages yet. But the introductory section and through the first financial section and everything, it's too bad it can't be required reading for every taxpayer. It's really incredible to see the overview of what you and the rest of the team does in this district. And the amount of work that goes in just on a daily basis, the required reporting alone is massive, and I don't think people realize just how responsible we are with those taxpayer dollars. And so I really, really appreciate all the work that goes into this. So thank you.
Other comments, questions? I have one question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I concur with what Mrs. Huey says, that this is very, very detailed, comprehensive, and I can tell that there's quite a bit that goes behind this report, and I think it's important. On question number 9, we had one indicator in which we state that we failed under debt expenditures per student. Could
Yes,
you
ma'am.
explain?
That's actually on the first report, which will be the next.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Just keep the question.
I will.
Thank you. I got confused. Any additional questions?
And Jeff, did you want to introduce our external auditors?
Oh, yes, I see that
Yes.
they're in the audience, and we'd love to have them introduced.
Well, and we mentioned
Thank
our
you.
external auditors giving their opinion.
Yes.
That's probably the big part to tell how we did, our report card, as you will. I'd like to introduce Janet Pittman from our audit firm of ABIP PC, Alfonso, Baccaris, Irvine, and Palmer.
Close.
Alonso.
Our name is changed. It's ABIP right now. So, anyway, good evening. It's our pleasure to be here this evening to present the results of the audit. I'd like to give you a kind of a broad overview of what we do when we come to do the audit. We started the audit in May this year. We were here for 2 or 3 weeks. First thing we do is our internal control documentation. So we're looking at your major processes, how you process payroll, how you process cash disbursements, cash receipts. We're going around, we're talking to the people that actually perform those duties. And then we're testing what they tell us to make sure that your internal controls are actually performing as they should. And we're pleased to report that we did not have any findings in those areas. We also have several state compliance procedures that we perform. One of those is the bidding, testing the compliance with your bidding of contracts out. So we select a number of bids, both in the general fund and in your federal funds, to make sure you're following the proper bidding procedures. Again, we did not have any findings in that area, anything to report to you. We also look at your PEEM submission. no problems there. We also look at your investment, your Public Funds Investment Act and your adherence to that with your investment policies and how you're making your investments. And we're required to do an audit over that. And we did not have any findings. You are in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. We also start our single audit in the interim period in May. We pick our major programs. This year it was Title I and Title III. And then we come back at year end. Because 3 weeks wasn't enough, so we come back in September, again, 2 to 3 weeks. And at that point, we're testing your year-end balances, what you get in your document. And one thing we like to tell you is we did not have any journal entries to those numbers, so the reports that you're getting throughout the year, you can rely on those reports to make your financial decisions. We did not have any audit adjustments in those numbers. We also get all your internal audit reports from Sharon. We review those to make sure there's nothing in there that we need to follow up on. And then when it comes to the reporting time, the package that, I guess you didn't get the paper document this year, but the over 200 pages, there's only about 200, there's only about 6 pages in there that are our pages. And page 1 is your independent auditor's report. And we are pleased to report that you have an unmodified opinion. It's the best opinion that you can get. On page 197 is your report on internal control and compliance with laws and regulations. Again, we have nothing out of the ordinary to report there. And the last opinion is over your major funds for your federal programs, and we did not have any findings or question costs. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions. I'd like to make sure I thank Dan and Jeff and Sharon and all their team. We could not do this audit without their help.
Mrs. Pittman, and do you have a colleague with you?
I do, sorry.
If you'd like to introduce him?
That's my colleague,
Yes.
Mike Del Toro. And
We're glad he's here.
thanks.
Do we have any questions for Mrs. Pittman? Seeing none? Thank you very much, and we appreciate what you and your firm does for us.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's see. Do I have a motion to accept, sign, and file the CAFR for the year ended June 30th, 2014, as required by law?
So move.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Additional questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President, we're going to go into first, and I guess we can maybe answer your question, but there's a couple of slides that Jeff wants to go over. That's a requirement that we have to go through every year. Thanks.
And again, I will be brief. The presentation of the school's first report is required by law. This is the ratings for the 2012-2013 fiscal year. So this is not based on the current year audited results that you just approved the CAFR on. This is the year before. School's first was to give taxpayers an idea of how we were doing financially. We have the various accountability ratings. So this is our financial accountability ratings. There are 20 indicators. They're pass, fail, or no credit, or partial credit, I'm sorry. All indicators are based on PEMS. The 2012-2013 rating, superior achievement, as in the 10 prior periods, we're in the maximum score in each one of the credits, each one of the indicators. And in a minute, we're going to get to the statewide comparison and show you which ones were the lowest scoring. Statewide, as you can see, 90% of all school districts in Texas, the 1,000+ school districts, most of them received a superior rating. Above standard rating puts us up past 95%. So most of the school districts in Texas are doing a good job. The big thing you can do to get in trouble on this is to either not submit your reports on time, which means that you didn't get your financial statements filed and audited timely, which usually means that you're having serious problems reconciling your books. Or if you get an adverse opinion on your audit, then you would also fail. Those are the biggest and easiest ways to fail schools first. The three lowest scoring indicators, number 7, the 3-year average of tax collection is greater than 98%. Invariably, I mean, all the different parts of Texas, there are some that, I mean, 98% is a big number to hit. The number 9, growth in enrollment, property tax collections, debt expenditures that you mentioned. There are, fast-growing school districts, when they have a lot of debt, they're going to have more debt expenditures per student than the $350 threshold that the state gives. If you have a 2% growth enrollment from 2 years prior, then you have a waiver on that, and you pass the indicator. That's one of the ways that we pass that number 9. There's also, if you collect more than, I do not recall the indicator dollar threshold right now, but you collect a certain threshold per student or per penny of effort, then you pass the indicator. That's one of the ways we pass this indicator also. Finally, indicators 6 and 10, did the annual report disclose material weakness or a lack of control? That is another one that was highly missed, and those are pretty much automatic fails when you do that. So those are ones you do not want to pass, or fail, I mean. Any questions on that? Do you want to get to number 9?
Sure.
What was your question specifically on that one?
Well, when I saw the 350, I thought, who came up with that? That was my first thought. And then of course, when you see fail,
Failure is not a good thing.
Yeah.
The problem that Schools First has had, and this is the 12th year of this is the 11th year of its since its inception, and they're trying to have one indicator for 1,000 different school
myriad
districts.
of school districts, yeah.
Some that are very small, some that are rural and spread over a large area. Some like us have been fast growing for a number of years. Urban, suburban, rural, it's just been hard for them to do it. The first probably 6 years, the indicators were constantly changing as they were trying to come to some accommodation on what worked and what didn't. This current set of indicators has been here for several years.
Right.
They really haven't made just some minor tweaks and thresholds. And indicators like number 9, I think number 9, number 10, and possibly number 8, they give you multiple ways to pass, because they know that not every school district can pass, because it's hard to fit a rule for everyone. So they gave you, it's like if you're a fast growing student, then we expect you to have a lot of debt per student if you have a fast growing district. So they give you an out for that.
Isn't this the report that the state controller likes to throw at us?
Aren't there lots of reports that the state comptroller likes to throw at us?
But isn't this one of them?
This is definitely one of them.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
this report also has various disclosures about the 2013-14 school year, required to report superintendent's contract,
Yes.
travel, various expenditures for both the superintendent and the board. So there's a lot of disclosures that they make in the name of transparency.
And hopefully in the future, I guess with the change, this thing is always moving. They're always looking at the different indicators, and they adjust them. So that's one thing that we're kind of hoping for, because not being a fast growth, but having older facilities, sometimes
Right.
you have to spend some money to remodel, and that's the problem that's occurring in some of the suburban districts who are landlocked. So eventually, I think some of these indicators will have to change, because then you're going to be seeing school districts falling off the edge and failing more so, but just because of that indicator. So I think there's going to be some adjustments, and I think they're looking at that right now.
Is there an appeal process for these sorts of questions?
No.
You can appeal if they calculate it incorrectly.
Right.
That's it?
But if your data submission is incorrect, and the data you gave TEA and PEMS is incorrect, then you have to live with the results.
But that's the thing. I mean, these are indicators and these are thresholds that they've come up with on their own. I mean, there's some validity to it, but like Jeff was saying, like over 1,000 school districts, not everybody's going to fit the same pie.
Well, and I agree, and it's not, we get an explanation, but the general public does not.
Correct.
And this is used as a mechanism by which to undermine some of the things that we do, and that's what I don't appreciate.
Right. And it's just like that comptroller's report that didn't showed us as far as the debt. and how much we
Exactly.
had, and without really going into the specifics. It was just showing an amount, so,
Okay. Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Additional questions? Mr. Wheat?
Let me follow up on that real quick. I know that you said there was the debt expenditure per student that we had, that it certainly stands out a little bit. Where would we compare against another fast-growth district like Northside or somebody else like that?
On debt expenditures per student,
Yes.
I would have to research that, sir. I can look up all the school districts you want off of TA's website. I just don't have that number off the top of my head.
I
Any
don't-
impression about it? I mean, just
It's going to probably reflect lower, because, I mean, they've gone north of 100,000 kids. Now, in the last, I think they've added almost $2 billion in debt in the last 10 years. So if you spread it across 100,000 kids, it's a little better than if you just spread it across 68,000 kids. Now, we don't have the debt that they do, but I think their cost per student would be lower than ours because they have just that many more students. So as they keep growing and keep adding debt, eventually that's going to start spiking. But if we stay at 68,000 kids and we keep adding debt, yeah, of course your per student cost. But
Goes
that's
up.
why we're aggressive as trying to prepay some of our bonded debt. That's why we're paying some of the premium, trying to get those numbers a little lower, so when we do go up, we won't have to do any type of big increase.
is it just your impression, though? Impression that we are on, sort of in a normal number for a fast-growing district?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were to really sit down and look at all the suburban districts, I think they run into the same type of problem. We were pretty fast growth, and now in the last 2 or 3 years, we've kind of flattened out, and we have been flat. But you got districts like SAISD who've lost enrollment. We don't project us doing that, but you're going to see the suburbans, the ones that are kind of landlocked. Your urban, I mean, your suburbans like your Comals, I mean, they're going to have tremendous growth. Northside, they still have maybe 1/3 more to grow, or maybe even more than that. So, but they're going to be piling on a lot more debt than we will, because they got to build new facilities. And they're aging facilities, the ones that were built back in the 60s or 70s, they're going to have to address those also. So it's hard to make a correlation, but I think we're going to be in the same boat as a lot of districts who have planned out, and even like fast growth ones. I mean, the rural ones, they're not growing, but they still have to push debt because the state doesn't give you any money to remodel or reconstruct, so.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Mr. Villarreal. Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the TEA School District Financial Integrity Rating of Superior Achievement as noted, and the NAISD Annual Management Report on Schools First?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wheat.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Any additional questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Next item.
D, consent. 1, Campus Support and Human Resources. A, School Health Advisory Council member appointments. B, School Health Advisory Annual Report. 2, Business Services. A, Sale or disposal of instructional materials or technological equipment. B, Bid items. C, Donations. 3, Construction. A, Hardy Oak Elementary School walking and jogging track construction document and bid delivery method approval. B, professional services contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments supporting the 2011 bond programs design and construction requirements. 4, minutes from October 2014. 5, end of consent.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Is there a board member wishing to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Yes, I have one.
Mr. Wheat?
D3A, please.
Okay, D3A. Thank you. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of D3A.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Second? Thank you, Mr.
Second.
White. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries. Mr. Wheat?
Regarding D3A, as much as I love the idea of the walking track and everything else, I'm simply asking that for policy reasons, we postpone it. I'd make a motion to postpone it. It can be as short as a week or as long as it takes to get some policy considerations back before the board.
Absolutely. Mr. Wheat, Madam President,
Yes,
board
sir.
members, we'll plan on bringing, first of all, we'll plan on doing additional research, but we're probably going to bring back a first reading of a board policy maybe as early as next Monday night.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Root, would you care to make the motion?
Make a motion to postpone.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and the consent agenda is approved as without D3A. Next item.
9, reports. A, financial statement, review of expenditures.
And this report has been provided to the trustees. Next item.
10, matters from the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 5 minutes, but are not permitted to personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies. 2, a personnel action. 3, a student disciplinary matter. 4, a complaint about a particular student. And 5, pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail care of the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217.
Ready? John Weber.
Mr. Weber? He's not here.
Not here?
I don't. No, me neither.
Okay.
Okay.
Selena Valdez.
Ms. Valdez?
Hi, my name is Selena Valdez. My address is 9033 Arrow 78217. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, members of the executive staff, and guests. Northeast Education Association is looking forward to celebrating American Education Week, November 16th through 22nd. American Education Week presents a wonderful opportunity to celebrate public education and honor individuals who are making a difference in ensuring that every child receives a quality education. And we are very honored that the president of the National Education Association, who's representing over 3 million educators, Lily Esquincel Garcia, she is coming to visit San Antonio. She will be here that week. And so along with the Texas State Teachers Association, we are hosting a dinner for all of our members, and we're of course going to have some honored, members there that we're going to represent on November 20th, next Thursday. And so we are very honored that she's here to visit with us, in San Antonio and seeing everything that we're doing. So we're working along with Harlandale and, Southside and Southwest and Northside, getting a big event for all the San Antonio area teachers to, welcome her as well. So I want to go ahead and extend that invitation. So please save the date for Thursday, November 20th, to be able to attend as well, any board member that's available. Thank you.
Okay, next item.
11, board member requests for items to be placed on next month's agenda.
Is there a board member who wishes to have an item placed on next month's agenda? Okay, next item.
12, discussion and possible action regarding board member requests for reports from the administration.
No action.
13, adjournment.
Thank you, and the time is 7:59. Thank you for your attendance.